We're going to start off with a few remarks from our guest of honor, who is Carin Bisland. Carin is currently the branch chief of the Partnering and Accountability Branch here at the Bay Program Office. Carin is responsible for coordinating federal, state, and local actions to improve water quality, habitat, and her favorite thing, living resource conditions in the Chesapeake Bay and its rivers. Some of the responsibilities of her team include coordination within and between Chesapeake Bay Program partner teams and committees, development of decision support tools to allow for adaptive management, the development and use of indicators and performance measures, and ongoing support for the federal office directors. Carin is about to retire after a 32-year career here at the Bay Program. This past Monday night, I can't say enough good things about Carin, so I guess I can just sum it up to say that this past Monday night, in his first declaration for an Admiral of the Chesapeake Bay Award, Governor Westmore declared Carin an Admiral of the Chesapeake Bay. And we're really sorry to see her go, but I don't think there's anybody better to talk about where we've been, where we're going, and what our future challenges are. So I'm going to hand it over to Carin.
Thanks, Matt. Can everybody hear me? Okay. We're here at this part of the summit to talk about celebrating the 40 years since signing the historic agreement entered into voluntarily by 3 governors from Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, a mayor from DC, a state legislator on behalf of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, which is a tri-state legislative body that Anna Killius, who's going to be a speaker in a moment, represents, and EPA, the EPA administrator on behalf of the federal government. And it was historic, not just because it happened 40 years ago, but because they recognized the problems that the Bay were really complex, and that complex problems required complex solutions, and that these solutions would only come about with a great deal of collaboration with each other. So they signed this historic agreement in 1983 to say it was a very simple one-page document, a whole lot different than what our watershed agreements are today. And it just basically said we commit to working with each other because we know that we can't get there alone. So it's very historic from that perspective. And we've really come far. Many of our rivers are running cleaner. We're seeing responses in the deep trench of the Chesapeake Bay with resilience in our underwater grasses in the Susquehanna Flats. And we have thousands of miles of waterways that have been reopened to migratory fish. We have seen really great success in oyster reef restoration efforts, and I'm really excited about that because when I started, we were putting shells in silt and watching them sink. And now we have the largest historic, the largest restoration, oyster reef restoration in the world in our own watershed. And that's because we have learned and grown. And finally, and not at all last, our children are more environmentally literate, our population is more engaged, and we're more diverse and more active than ever before. So it's exciting, and we're making progress in North America's largest estuary, and we should celebrate. I mean, at the same time, our pace is slower than what we hoped for. We've set targets to reach and timelines that we're fast approaching, and everyday challenges to overcome. But we have shown that we can overcome them. We've shown what it takes to overcome them. We also have world-changing challenges, such as climate change that Anna's probably going to go into a little bit, and maybe Kate, that we have to show how our innovation and creativity goes past what we've done in the past and bring it forward. We have to be adaptive, and we have to learn from our successes as well as our challenges. That anything is possible. We also know that we can't do it alone. It requires all of us, not just the government, not just EPA, not just the states, but we all have to, all of us want a future that includes a healthy bay and watershed for the fish and for the people who live here. Perhaps what got us here won't get us there, but as John F. Kennedy once said, we celebrate the past to awaken the future. So we celebrate these past 40 years. Let us acknowledge the challenges ahead of us. Let us work together, listen to each other, build on what has worked, but be creative and open to the future. As I stand here today in front of you on the last week of my career, I'm proud of what those before in this relay of restoration were able to achieve. And I'm proud of what I and those running beside me have been able to achieve. And I handed off this celebration of the past 40 years to those who are taking the baton from me and into the future. We have a lot of work to do, but we're building on a great foundation. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Matt.
Thank you, Carin. Some great words of wisdom. I think we're going to move into our first video that we have presentation. Joy, take it away.
It begins in New York, but also Virginia and Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware, and DC. The Chesapeake Bay watershed spans 64,000 square miles. This is the area of land where rain or snow ultimately flows to the Chesapeake.
Everybody is in a watershed.
The stream that goes through your neighborhood, you can see how it's connected to the bay.
Whatever starts way up there and comes down here ends up going down to the bay.
The Susquehanna River, for example, travels hundreds of miles through cities and farmland, and pollution in one place is carried downstream.
The unity of the whole thing. There is no such thing as just a part of the bay. What happens in every part of the bay affects every other part. Well, I can remember when Chesapeake Bay was relatively clear water. Now all of that really has changed.
I think we have Mac Mathias to thank because he was one of the early people that said we got to do something about this body of water.
The oyster take is down dramatically from what it was at the beginning of the century. Fish are harder to find.
Things were not looking very good in the 1960s and 70s. That's when our aquatic grasses just crashed. That's when that water clarity really started to get bad.
Oysters, blue crabs, striped bass, brook trout, hunting, fishing, hiking, biking, kayaking, canoeing, all of those things are really important to both the economy and the recreation in the area.
We've got species diversity, of course, but we've got tons of diversity of people.
I first experienced the Chesapeake Bay from a workboat.
On another level, it's this place where my kids can go and my members can go and find a level of peace.
I've grown up on this land. I followed my dad all around on it.
I'm a fourth generation farmer. You know, I like to fish and crab, and I want it to be there for my kids and my grandchildren.
The Chesapeake Bay and the tributaries is not just a way to make a living, it's a tradition, it's a way of life. It's kind of in your blood.
The oysters act as a filter to clean the water, so the more oysters come back, the better the water quality will be.
In 1975, at the urging of Senator Mathias, Congress funded a 5-year study of the bay's failing health, coordinated by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. In 1983, the Chesapeake Bay Commission sponsored a conference at George Mason University.
And that was the point at which the governor signed the first Bay Agreement. That was the beginning of the Chesapeake Bay program.
The 83 agreement was not even a page in length, and they were just trying to understand what's wrong with the Chesapeake.
We did all kinds of outreach for the Bay program to explain in lay language what was going on with the Bay and get feedback on proposed actions.
The Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay also made sure that there was a citizen monitoring effort very early on so that citizens could get involved not only in how they can help restore the bay, but also in monitoring the success.
As the Bay Agreements have evolved over time, they've gotten more comprehensive in terms of trying to capture what are all the different activities us humans carry out on the land that could influence local waters and influence the Chesapeake.
This great partnership of so many different federal agencies, state agencies and governments, as well as community foundations and nonprofit organizations, all work together to understand better what's happening in the Chesapeake Bay so that we can make the decisions that will actually help improve the bay's health.
So all the monitoring we do is coordinated through the Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership. We use the monitoring data, one, to improve models that we have to simulate conditions in the bay and its watershed. And those models are used to help say, where do we need to reduce nutrients coming into the bay and by how much to improve conditions for fish. We also then use the monitoring to try to focus where we want to put the restoration efforts. Then finally, we use it over time to say, is the bay and its watershed getting better as we put all these efforts in to reduce pollution?
As we went into the 2014 Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement, the ask to put goals in there, to put objectives, leaving flexibility about how we got there.
We do things more than just water quality. It's about really ecosystem management.
We also understood that to be successful, we needed a more diverse group of partners, a more diverse group of leaders that reflected the cultures that we have across the Chesapeake itself.
To have these states come together in the Bay watershed, it's the only way we're going to keep the Bay alive and productive for a long time.
All right, very good. I think we're going to move on to our next first speaker. Now that everybody understands what the Bay program is, it's clear as mud. But maybe Anna will help us clarify that. Anna Killius joined the commission in 2023 as executive director. She's executive director of the Chesapeake Bay Commission here in Annapolis. She previously served as director of advocacy for the James River Association and legislative counsel for Congressman John Sarbanes of Maryland, where she advanced his leadership as co-chair of the Congressional Chesapeake Bay Watershed Task Force. Anna has held appointments to the Chesapeake Bay Citizens Advisory Committee and the Virginia Soil and Water Conservation Board. She is a 2021 graduate of the Virginia Natural Resources Leadership Institute. She received a Juris Doctor degree from William & Mary Law School, where she was a member of the first class of the Virginia Coastal Policy Center, and a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Dallas with a concentration in applied mathematics. Anna is going to talk to you about future challenges today for Bay restoration. Let me share my screen.
Great. Well, thank you, Matt. And hello, everyone. It is excellent to be here with you all today to talk about the future challenges that are impacting our progress towards reaching our Chesapeake Bay goals as a region. A little bit about the Chesapeake Bay Commission. We are, as Carin pointed out, a tri-state legislative body. We were formed by the General Assemblies of Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania in the 1980s. Our mission is really to advise those General Assemblies and the U.S. Congress on issues of mutual concern impacting the health of the Chesapeake Bay and its watershed. Our members, we have 7 members from each of those states, including 5 state legislators, a citizen representative, and a designee from each of the governors. We have been a signatory of every Bay Agreement since 1983. All of the other signatories, it's worth noting, are representatives of executive branches and executive branch functions. And so the commission stands alone as the sole legislative voice within this partnership. Next slide. So I'm just going to kick off with the elephant in the room, right? So let's talk about the outcome receiving the bulk of attention right now as we approach 2025, our progress as a region towards meeting our watershed implementation plans. How are we going to meet water quality goals? These WIPs, their goal is to reduce sufficient amounts of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment to meet the Chesapeake Bay total maximum daily load, and ultimately our water quality standards for dissolved oxygen, clarity, or underwater grass abundance, and chlorophyll A. So it is no secret that at this point, we are not on pace to meet our 2025 target date for having all of the necessary practices in place to meet our WIPs and our pollution reduction goals. As you can see here, as of 2021, we've achieved just under half of our nitrogen load reduction goal. If we were on track, we should be at about 80% by that point. But overall, our actions and the investments that we've made have brought us closer to our goal, even if the future actions that we take will need to adapt to take on new approaches to get to our ultimate vision. Notably, we've made major improvements to the wastewater sector, which is responsible for 60% of the nitrogen reductions that we've achieved so far as a watershed. But we'll have future opportunities in that sector to squeeze more gains from improved wastewater treatment improvement in the future. Our developed lands are a very different story. None of the nitrogen pollution reductions we've achieved so far have come from the developed sector. And in fact, we continue to lose ground there, experiencing increased pollution loads from stormwater runoff. Next slide. I think the biggest bellwether for our future success, and consequently one of our greatest challenges moving forward as a Bay program, is our ability to secure significant load reductions from farmland within the Bay watershed. And as you can see on this slide, according to and the slide is already dated as I found out, according to the Bay jurisdiction's WIPs, 85% of the remaining nitrogen pollution reductions are planned to come from the agriculture sector. And I just double checked that figure. It's actually 88%. It's higher than I even thought. And that is even as our farmers are facing pressure to squeeze ever more production out of even fewer acres. The chart on the right shows that the number of animal units within the Chesapeake Bay watershed continues to rise, and that comes with additional animal feed and manure loads that we need to address. The Bay Program's Science and Technical Advisory Committee recently released a report that points out that the most severe and extensive mass imbalances, those areas where nutrient imports are exceeding nutrient exports, are in the regions that are dominated by intensive agriculture, and particularly in areas where we've seen an increase in livestock numbers. Targeting our approaches in the future and our resources to those areas where we have the mass imbalance will be one of the major challenges that we need to face as a program. Next slide. The Science and Technical Advisory Committee's report also brought attention to the response gaps and the lags in the water quality response that we see from the actions we're taking to reduce pollution loads. Our goal within the partnership is not just to reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, but in doing so, it is to attain our water quality standards in those key bay habitats for the benefit of our living resources. And as you can see here, 29% of tidal waters have attained their water quality standards, which is a 3% improvement from 1985, but it's down from the all-time high of 42%. We are going to have to grapple with this gap between our pollution reduction actions and the water quality response we're seeing. And that includes the impact that climate change continues to have on reshaping our expectations and our possibilities for the future. We may need to refocus our more immediate attention on certain bay habitats, particularly shallow waters and the transition zones where land and marine environments meet, which is where water quality criteria and the benefits to living resources may be more readily achieved in the immediate future. Next slide. I really want to stress the importance of acknowledging not just the water quality but the living resource response as the hallmarks of the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. The vision, which I've clipped here, of the Chesapeake Bay program extends beyond clean water. It includes abundant life, conserved lands, access, cultural heritage, and an engagement of a diverse array of stakeholders. Our vision is driven by how our communities interact with, use, and enjoy the Bay, its watershed, and its living resources. So while, as of right now, I've touched on just 2 of the Bay Agreement outcomes, we have to remember there are 10 goals and 31 outcomes in total, and they stretch across all of the priorities within our vision. We are uncertain or off track on 17 of those outcomes, including the 2 that we've discussed so far, WIPs and water quality standards. But we're on track to complete 14 of those outcomes, which are all contributing together to the future health and vitality of the Bay watershed. Next slide. So holding on to that holistic view of how our goals and outcomes fit together and relate to one another will continue to be an important challenge for the Bay program moving forward. Bringing ecosystem services into renewed focus can offer a number of opportunities, however, for our partnership. It can help us orient our actions toward achieving multiple benefits or outcomes at the same time, rather than solely focusing on nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. This can bring attention and resources towards outcomes like land conservation and wetlands, where there are significant living resource and climate resilience services to be gained. And looking at ecosystem services provided by these outcomes can also broaden and deepen our stakeholder engagement, because we are better meeting the diversified needs of all the different communities within our watershed and getting local buy-in. And that is going to help us put all available resources to work on this problem. Next slide. For some of our on-track outcomes, the work is not over and we can't take our eyes off of our goals. We have to remain vigilant moving forward. The iconic blue crab, a fishery of significant commercial and recreational value, needs attention. Our management metrics for female crabs tell us that the fishery is not depleted and it's not being overfished. But despite the low exploitation rates for the fishery, the abundance of male and female adult crabs has decreased in 2022, and juvenile abundance rates remain low. That suggests that there's a disconnect between abundance, recruitment, and our management actions. The Chesapeake Bay Stock Assessment Committee has recommended, and EPA, Virginia, and Maryland are working together to fund a new benchmark stock assessment that will evaluate how the past 10 years of changes within the Bay may be impacting blue crabs and what potential new science needs we need moving forward. A far less photogenic species that I didn't put on this slide are invasive blue catfish. Introduced to the freshwater parts of Virginia for recreational fishing opportunities, they're now in every major tidal tributary in Virginia and Maryland. And because they're apex predators, they feed on basically anything, including important native species like blue crab and shad. And the rapid expansion of that blue catfish population is coinciding with declines in some of the economically and culturally important species that contribute to our communities. Maryland and Virginia are exploring a number of avenues at the state and federal level to tackle the dramatic rise in catfish, but there's still more work to do to figure out which of those strategies is going to be most effective. Next slide. From fisheries to canopies, I have heard it said multiple times that trees are the answer to water quality, to resilience, to rising temperatures in our cities and our streams. But they're a big challenge for the Bay program moving forward. Preserving and expanding forests and tree canopy is critically important for meeting many of our outcomes. And we've set really ambitious goals on this front. Our WIPs include implementation of over 190,000 acres of forested buffer, but we've only achieved 20% of that goal to date. Meanwhile, we have experienced a net loss of 25,000 acres of urban tree canopy cover. The challenge ahead of us is not only to expand our tree planting and forest buffer efforts, but it's to ensure we're protecting and conserving the trees we have and preventing further loss from land use change. Next slide. Climate change. Perhaps the greatest challenge ahead of us for many different reasons. We are already experiencing the impacts of climate change, but we have much work to do to truly understand what the new projections for rainfall, sea level rise, and temperature mean for things like runoff rates and freshwater flow, habitat loss, and species response. The science we're working on today we're working from today is based on past observations of the Bay, of yesterday's Bay. And we are going to need to understand the Bay of today and the Bay of the future. We also need to help our communities throughout the watershed prepare for the challenges that they're going to face from climate change. Because after all, we are one of the species that calls the Bay habitat our home, and we depend upon its resources for our health and well-being. The choices that our communities make to mitigate the impacts of climate change are going to have an impact on our livelihoods and on our ecosystems. And that brings me to my last slide, I think. Maybe. Great. I wanted to leave you with this picture. This is December 8th, 1983, the eve of the signing of our first Bay Agreement. At our biennial meeting last week in Charlottesville, I was struck by how much remains the same and how much is different 40 years later after this photo. We gathered together in person on Thursday with large sheets of paper taped all over the walls, just like this photo, with tons of strategies and ideas and lessons for the future. But there were also folks listening online, populating chat boxes and participating virtually. Today, as in 1983, the science is leading the way, and we know so much more about the science after 40 years of data. But our understanding is being quickly eclipsed by the new future presented by climate change. And finally, looking at this picture and reflecting on the room last week, there was probably a lot more diversity reflected in the folks in the room with us. But we have so much more work to do to make sure that the folks in this conversation reflect the communities we need to bring into the work. So I'm excited because I know there are brilliant people that are committed to this work, but we've got a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Very nice. just curious if there's anyone in the audience who was present for the 1983, 1987, 2000, or 2014 agreements. Carin, you're not allowed to answer this. Please type this in the chat. I'd like to know if there's anyone present on the call. Speaking of communities, we just had a session on serving underserved communities at 11:30, serving underserved communities in the Chesapeake watershed. We wanted to touch on a little bit on that during this session. So we have another video about the diverse perspectives from throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So Joy, if we could share that next, that would be great.
I grew up in West Virginia. And in West Virginia, the Chesapeake Bay was seemed as far away as California. So you wouldn't think I would have an affinity for it, but I do.
The diversity really of landscape, of people, of experiences that you can have in this region is the reason why I moved here in the first place.
It's always fun to eat a bushel of crabs in the summer, so.
I like to fish. I like to hunt. It wasn't so long ago you couldn't catch a striped bass in the Chesapeake Bay.
It's this place where my kids can go and my members can go and find a level of peace.
It's hard to believe that the 2 weeks that I planned to stay have grown into a lifetime of almost 45 years.
To me, it starts right here at this stream behind us, and if I know that that stream is clear and clean, somebody that's down there boating or having fun in that Chesapeake Bay or eating those oysters, that's a benefit that somebody else is even receiving just because we're doing something right here.
My name is Ida Hall. We're on my father's home place on the Chesapeake Bay. I got hooked on the waterman's way of life. It was so close to nature. I think it's extremely, extremely important to have all of the states that are in the Chesapeake Bay watershed to be committed to want to keep this bay as good as it is now and improve it so that not just my generation or your generation, but my great niece and great nephews, the generations to come, will be able to experience, you know, what it's like to go out in the bay and catch a fish, a wild fish, and to, you know, catch their own crabs, or to see, I mean, I catch little seahorses in my crab pots. It's just amazing what's out there in the bay.
I'm Dennis Tracy. I'm the president of the Smithfield Foundation and the current chair of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. To have a clean Chesapeake Bay makes business sense more than most anything you can imagine. Not just from the people that work on the water, people who do guide trips right behind us here, our kayakers and canoers, recreational folks. They depend on a clean bay and clean tributaries to the bay. Businesses spring up all over that are related to fishing, that are related to hunting, that are related to sightseeing and tourism. All of those bring enormous amounts of money and cash into an area, and you can't do that if you've got a polluted asset or something that's ugly and not appealing. The other thing a lot of people forget in the business community is we want to be good parts of the community as well. We attract executives from all over the world that come to Virginia, and nobody wants to go to a place that is not taking care of business at home. So by emphasizing the quality of life here in this part of the world, this is the James River. A lot of people live and work nearby, and also a lot of people really just enjoy having it there. And knowing that it is improving, those are the kind of people that we want to be employees at our businesses in Virginia. People who respect and expect a quality of life that is second to none. And the Chesapeake Bay effort is a huge part of that.
My name is Luke Brubaker. I started farming in the 60s, and my dad started farming in 1929 on the farm where I live today. We did a lot of plowing and we worked the ground. We worked the ground. Today I'd say we worked the ground to death because we thought that that was the only way you could farm back in the 70s and the 80s. Well, we learned there's much better ways to farm, and over the years we worked our way to the no-tilling. It's not only a value for us, which I like to say any conservation practices that we're doing is a benefit for us. But in return, when you're doing that, it's a great return for the Chesapeake Bay. So you get a great benefit for everybody. It starts right here in the farm. We are part of the wellhead protection area for our local community at this farm we're standing on here right now. And when we can put good, clean water into the aquifer, that is not only a plus for us, but it's a plus for our cattle, it's a plus for the local community. So it's a win-win for everybody for a good management practice.
My name is Reverend Johnny Calhoun, and I'm the pastor of Mount Olive AME Church. If you look at it, God being the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega, if you will, He says and shows how important water is in the beginning of the Bible, and at the end of the Bible, that same water flows to the throne of God. And so just understanding that and realizing the sacred contribution of water and the sanctity of water and the position that God from the very beginning placed water in, from a theological standpoint, understanding that helps the faith community to convey to the general community that we're partners in this water situation. We work to get a number of churches in the African American community, as well as a couple of mosques involved, to be all in to take a second look at how churches can partner more effectively with the environmental community. And what we absolutely need is the capacity, support, and resources to expand what we're doing and to be able to increase our reach so that we can have a greater impact. You know, I believe that in spite of the tremendous work that's taking place to improve the Bay, if we don't have the resources to get a broader segment of the community involved, there'll be some undoing of some of the progress we make just because we don't have a greater percentage of persons who are all in. And so the capacity to get more people in the water is something that we're aiming to be able to achieve over the next few years.
My name is Sarah Anderson, and I run a consulting firm that specializes in urban sustainability, specifically urban parks and urban forestry, called Lily Leaf Solutions. So Lily Leaf is a member of the Chesapeake Bay Diversity Work Group, which we're thrilled to be part of. And we also are working on part of the Chesapeake Bay tree canopy strategy, the part that deals with environmental justice. So one of the main areas of focus that we have is to help build capacity, local capacity of tree planting organizations to engage people who have systemically been disenfranchised. So folks who are living in areas with really low canopy coverage. We don't really permeate the community and we don't really have a presence there. And what Lily Leaf is working to do is to have the people who are in those communities that have been systemically disenfranchised, right, lower socioeconomic status communities, mostly communities of color, we're working to have them say what they want. You know, what do they want their canopy to look like? And then have those needs and those desires drive the work that tree planters and nonprofits and municipalities are doing. So within the Chesapeake Bay region, we have a ton of diversity. You know, we've got species diversity, of course, but we've got tons of diversity of people. And not everybody's voice is necessarily at the table making decisions about what happens with our canopy. And so that's what we're working to do. We're working to increase the representation and to increase the agency and the power that people have over their own communities.
My name is Jennifer Volk. I'm the Environmental Quality Extension Specialist here at the University of Delaware. I also worked with DNREC, our Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, and there I helped develop our watershed implementation plan for the Delaware portion of the Chesapeake. And in Delaware, about 50% of the land area in the Chesapeake drainage is agriculture, and it contributes most of the nitrogen and phosphorus that gets to the bay. And so it's one of the main areas where we've focused our implementation strategies. I think our farmers in Delaware and Delmarva and across the Chesapeake watershed are really leading the way when it comes to nutrient management practices. The 4 R's, the right time, the right place, the right source, and the right method are all ways that we can still continue to fine-tune how we're managing our nutrients so that they're used more effectively and efficiently.
To have these states come together in the Bay watershed, it's the only way we're going to keep the Bay alive and productive for a long time.
The states that surround the Chesapeake Bay are focused like laser beams on improving the Chesapeake Bay. EPA is a good governor to have there. They are the people who set an expectation and let the states go and try to do it.
The Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership has been a great initiative for Delaware to be involved in. As a headwater state, we weren't completely at the table in the beginning, but we're there now. And it's benefited us because it's brought funds in to help us support our partners within our state, like our conservation districts. And so the funds that come in to Delaware and go out to our partner organizations help get best management practices on the ground, but then also help us to look at new and innovative technologies like air seeders for cover crops, so we can get more early planted cover crops on the ground and not interfere with a farmer's operation for growing their corn.
The greatest victory is not only for this farm by keeping water and soil in the farm, but it's a victory for our community.
The Chesapeake Bay has improved dramatically. This river has improved dramatically.
We stand on the same planet, we breathe the same air, and we drink the same water source. And so if we don't work together and collaborate to protect and save that, it affects all of us.
Making sure that everybody feels that they're limitless, that everybody feels like they can have, that opportunities are going to come their way, and they feel optimistic, they feel nourished, they feel whole because they're able to reconnect with nature. That's what more can you ask for?
The value of the partnership of everybody working together on issues that involve farmers and cities and localities and state governments and businesses and environmental groups, there is enormous value in that because everyone has been pulling the oars in the same direction for quite some time now, and we're beginning to see the fruits of that labor.
All right, very good. So talking about everything that folks are doing across the watershed, we invited our next speaker, which is Kate Fritz, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Alliance for Chesapeake Bay, to talk about being a good Chesapeake steward. I've known Kate for 23 years. I say that because I know she's going to roll her eyes when I say it. Kate has lived in 5 of the 7 Chesapeake watershed jurisdictions and now calls Annapolis, Maryland, her home. Kate currently serves, again, as the CEO of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, a regional nonprofit that has been bringing together communities, companies, and conservationists to restore the lands and waters of the Chesapeake Bay watershed for the last 50 years. Kate believes in the power of collaboration and inclusivity and currently volunteers with many groups in the community, including the Anne Arundel County Women's Giving Circle and the St. Mary's College of Maryland Alumni Association. Kate earned an Executive Master of Natural Resources focused on leadership and sustainability from Virginia Tech, as well as a master's degree in environmental management from the University of Maryland University College. Kate has held positions in both the private and public sectors, starting her career as a field biologist and then working for 7 years in the planning department in Prince George's County, Maryland. Prior to joining the Alliance, Kate served as the executive director of the South River Federation, now known as the Arundel Rivers Federation. So welcome, Kate. Are you still with us, Kate?
Thanks. I am here, Matt. Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Let me share your PowerPoint.
I can't believe it's been 23 years. Full disclosure, Matt and I went to college together. We spent lots of time in the lab and on the St. Mary's River together. So,
yeah, probably more than you'd like. All right, here you go.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate you coming and plugging in here today, knowing that the competition today is some beautiful weather outside to enjoy the Chesapeake Bay that we've all been talking about here. So as Matt said, my name is Kate Fritz, and I have the honor of serving as the CEO of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Alliance. I'm going to talk a little bit about stewardship and how you can be part of the solution in the Chesapeake Bay. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Chesapeake Bay Awareness Week. So Matt, if you want to hit to the next slide, that'd be great. So as Matt introduced the Alliance, we've been doing our work for 5+ generations. We were founded in 1971. Our mission is to bring together the communities, companies, and conservationists of the Chesapeake Bay watershed to improve our lands and waters. We really envision a landscape of clean waters and rivers flowing through resilient landscapes, which is even more critical with climate change challenges pressing down on us, cared for by the 19 million people who live, work, and play in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. That's a large land area, and a lot of people have a large stake in the Chesapeake Bay. As an organization, we really value collaboration. We don't do anything alone. We do collaboration across all sectors and across Chesapeake Bay. We value being an inclusive partner and demonstrating integrity with the work that we do in partnership. And we believe in being results driven, really action oriented, really doing work to accelerate the rate of cleaner water being restored to our watershed. So next slide there, Matt. When we look at the work we do, we work across the 64,000 square mile watershed, which starts up in Cooperstown, New York, and goes down into Southern Virginia there. And so there are 7 jurisdictions in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We operate at our headquarters out of Annapolis, Maryland. We have an office in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and in Richmond, Virginia. What's really important when you look at this map of the Chesapeake Bay watershed is that you see that the amount of land area is so much larger than the amount of actual water in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So there, for every 14 acres of land, there's only 1 acre of water. So the work that the Alliance does is really focused upstream to help prevent pollution from where it starts, working in partnership across different companies and communities, different neighborhoods to restore the lands so that we are bringing cleaner water to our tributaries and ultimately to the Chesapeake Bay itself. Next slide. We do this work through 4 different program areas. The first 3 there are really what I think of as our boots on the ground work. So we do a lot of work in agriculture, forests, and green infrastructure. Those 3 programs are really built to align with the needs of the different landscapes of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So whether we're in rural Lancaster working with our farming community, or whether we're in Shenandoah Valley working with different landowners and restoring forests, or whether we're in urban Baltimore, urban Washington, D.C., or suburban Maryland, suburban Virginia, suburban West Virginia, really helping bring green infrastructure practices back. Those are our 3 boots on the ground programs. And then our 4th program is our stewardship and engagement program. And this is really where we're trying to engage more of the 19 million people that live, work, and play in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We do things like run community science monitoring programs, which I believe Carin had mentioned earlier, helping community scientists collect data about their local rivers and streams, which can be used to inform policymakers and to engage and educate our public. The picture you see is from our annual Chesapeake Bay Watershed Forum, which is held the first weekend of November. And I highly suggest you check it out. It's out in at the National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. It's over 400 practitioners across the watershed coming together to collaborate and really share ideas and continue to spur us on to action. So those are the alliances for different programs. So I want to just take a minute before I transition into the stewardship piece of my talk today. And I want to talk about why this work's personal to me, because I bet you're all in this work or interested in this because this is personal to you too. So I've always been into fishing my whole life. And I've only recently just gotten hooked into fly fishing in the last 2 years. It was one of my COVID hobbies that I picked up. But I've been going up to this piece of property in the Poconos for the entirety of my life. There's my dad and I on the right side of the screen. You know, I was first introduced to water in the Pocono Mountains, and that's where I learned to fish, and that's where I learned about forest management and natural resource management. And you know, here's a photo of me in the middle just from earlier this year out fishing this winter. So this work is really important to me because I know that the work we're all doing on the land is greatly positively impacting the water, so that we can continue to do things like recreate and find our safe and sacred spaces in the outdoors. And my hope is that truly we're doing it for more of the 19 million people that live, work, and play in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So this work is deeply personal to me. So I'm going to move into some actionable things that you can do in your everyday life as you're moving about in your communities in different ways. So I'd encourage you, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. Happy to answer them along the way. But as we know that climate change is going to bring more extreme weather and flooding. And so there's all sorts of ways that you can help on your property. You can help install rain gardens, which are, you can see the schematic there, an opportunity for us to collect the water at the bottom of our downspout, plant some native plants, and let that water infiltrate into the ground instead of running off hot and polluted. You can help install rain barrels. That's a couple of us at the Alliance team there on the left installing a rain barrel last year on our former building. Conservation landscaping, permeable pavers. These are all things you can do on your property. The Alliance has a ton of resources, and I'll get a little bit into that as well. Next slide, Matt. You know, when I think about the call to action around agricultural pollution and the fact that we haven't really moved the needle in many, many years with agricultural pollution, I think often of myself and all of us as consumers and the influence that we have. And, you know, when we're purchasing products that are, you know, being produced with the environment in mind, with the Chesapeake Bay watershed in mind, we're voting with our dollars and saying, you know, we want businesses that are responsible and doing the right thing. So the Alliance partners with all of the corporations you see on this slide. We're really trying to work at the supply chain level to help accelerate and expand the rate of restoration that's happening on our farms. And if this is of interest to you, you can certainly check out our website. We've got lots more information about all these partnerships. But you as a consumer get to inform how businesses really operate. So do your homework, and before you purchase something, you know, really understand the business's ethos and the work that they're doing, because there's a lot of great companies who are working hard in the space to bring about lighter practices on the Chesapeake Bay as we produce food for a growing world. Next slide, Matt. So one of the other ways, if you own a property or if you have access to a community garden or a green space, is to help plant native trees and shrubs. Not only are these plants evolved for the temperatures of our area, but they have evolved with all of the pollinators that also live here. So this is a really great opportunity for you to take an action at your church, at your school, in your backyard to plant native plants. The Alliance, I listed a couple of our websites here, but we have some really great resources that you can plug in and learn all sorts of what plants to put in your property. I'm getting the 2-minute warning here, so I'm going to keep moving through. Next slide, please, Matt. These are easy things, you know, they might just seem silly, but bringing your reusable mug, your reusable water bottle, your reusable bag that keeps plastic out of our waterways is critically important. Next slide. Conservation dollars, you know, you as if you buy a fishing license in any of the states, you are helping contribute to conservation funding. So I highly encourage you to consider purchasing fishing licenses. The Chesapeake Bay Plate, I know Maryland and Virginia have a Bay Plate that benefits conservation as well. So that's another way for you to vote with you, or to utilize your dollars to help spur on conservation. Next slide. I just wanted to add that, you know, we're working with Bowie State University and other historically Black colleges and universities to offer paid internships, to engage students, to help continue to build a more diverse pipeline of professionals into the environmental world. If you're an outdoorsy person, if you're somebody who has access to a boat or fishing, I'd really encourage you to be a mentor. Take somebody out with you who might not have an opportunity to do so, because we can't care about what we can't touch and what we can't enjoy. Next slide. We have a great website called the Chesapeake Network. It really is kind of the heart of the Chesapeake in terms of job posting, events going on, different reports that have been released. It's a great place to check in. So chesapeakenetwork.org, free listserv. Highly encourage you to check it out for the daily digest or the weekly digest. So it's a great resource. Next slide. We have a fantastic resource page where you can learn all about different actions you can take in your backyard. So I went through a couple of them earlier. We've got some great YouTube series called Tree Talks and our native plant narratives that you can find on our website, really instructional and informational.
No, he didn't do it. He's sick. Oh.
Informational resources on our website.
There's a lot of stuff.
So you can check that out.
Hang on 1 second, Kate. If you are not on mute, could you please place yourself on mute? We still have a speaker speaking. Thank you. Go for it, Kate.
Very good. So just some more resources for how you can take actions in your own backyard on the Alliance's website there. Next slide. I'm going to cruise through the next couple, but you know, we all just lived through Earth Month yet again. The Alliance has tons of opportunities to get out and volunteer. The more hands on deck, the better. Project Clean Stream is an opportunity for communities to come together and pick up trash and help beautify their community. You can check that out on our website. We're always looking for more folks to help, or we can help you organize your own event as well. Next slide. We do tons of tree plantings as an organization. So this is an opportunity for you to get dirty with us and help plant trees all around the watershed. Great for students who need volunteer hours. And we have lots of opportunities. We're kind of wrapping up as it's about to get warmer here, but we'll pick back up in the fall. So definitely check out our website and tree planting opportunities. Next slide. This is our one of our community science projects, River Trends. If you're interested in potentially collecting data about your local river or stream, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help connect you. It's a great way to get involved. And that's just our URL. If you've got your camera out, you're welcome to take a picture of that QR code and find your way to our volunteer page. And then I think I've got like 2 or 3 more here. One thing Matt wanted me to plug was Chesapeake Bay Awareness Week, which is coming up the first week of June 3rd through the 11th. The Chesapeake Bay program is really the kind of hub and connector of Chesapeake Bay Awareness Week. So the point of the Awareness Week is to celebrate the cultures, history, and natural beauty of the nation's largest estuary. And this year's theme is around Chesapeake journeys. So a lot of the partnership will be sharing stories about the journeys that both people and wildlife take within the Chesapeake region. So next slide. And here's some themes for the week. This is all on their website. You can go find this out, but really tune into social media. There's gonna be some incredible stories about the Chesapeake Bay, whether it's about wildlife migrations or whether it's about journeys over land or journeys over water. I really encourage you to plug in and learn more about the Chesapeake Bay watershed during Chesapeake Bay Awareness Week. I think that is my last slide. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kate. Great. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank all of our speakers. I want to thank all of our participants. Certainly have a lot of work ahead of us. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the summit. Good afternoon, and may the force be with us all. Thank you.